The story begins like this. He knew this day would come. Two men are sitting in the dining room eating lunch. What day? What do you mean? Duke Effenberg said. Bastian Effenberg says he wants to marry Luke Bischel. The Duke wondered what he had said. This decision seemed to him as strange as possible. Bastian, he said, don't pretend you didn't hear. You threatened me with it, didn't you? And he doesn't care what the Duke thinks. He's already made up his mind. The Duke sat with a surprised face. Dear father, Bastian addressed him, this is a very favorable party. Luke Bischel is the sole heir of the Bischel family. Bastian is weak and arrogant, so be kind enough to accept Miss Bischel properly. She has it all, strength, looks, and talent, Bastian said. She's perfect for him, don't you think? The Duke needed time to think. He feared her more than he feared death. How did they come to this? The most handsome young man in the kingdom is Bastian Effenberg. Speaking of Bastian, hair the color of a wheat field, bright blue eyes like jewels. His appearance earned him the nickname Angel. His position in society was fully in keeping with this nickname. When the baby, Duke Effenberg's dear son, was born, his mother told the Duke the news. He was so happy that he cried. After the birth, the whole house was filled with joy. After all, this child was the most wanted, Duke Effenberg's sole heir and successor. He was the Duke's treasure, but so beautiful is his upbringing. The Duke was talented, responsible, and intelligent. Everyone admired him for his noble firmness. But the Duke, in front of his son, he was becoming completely different. Like cotton candy melted in water. Even more surprisingly, the Duke is the king's cousin. This boy has literally everything. He was so cultured that he even understood when the maid brought him something extra from the food. Also, he could always admonish if those things he wore yesterday. He forgave, finding others. He could have asked his father to have the Duke change his teacher, because this one was annoying, even though his father told him that this teacher was the best of the best. Still, he honored his son's request. He was a boy who recognized his authority, but discipline was out of the question. And now back to reality, so he says. He was too busy working. Miss Luke Bischel, the famed monster hunter. That's not so bad, he thought, clutching his head, mulling over what he'd said with his son. But then he remembered something. Wait, Luke Bischel. The Duke had always used Luke Bischel as a means of blackmailing his son. So, Luke Bischel is the Jewel of Lords, the most famous royal knight in the kingdom. She has no equal in magic, a mage knight that everyone admires, but she ruthlessly destroys her targets, sparing no effort or expense. That's Luke Bischel. Bastian, if you get cranky, she'll give herself to Luke Bischel. The name had always been a means of blackmail for the little boy. If you don't obey, I'll sell you to Luke. Luke hates spoiled brats like you. If you don't study, he'll send you to fight Luke. It was more than effective. Bastian, one more word and I'll marry you to Luke Bischel. And the worst threat of all was the wedding. I'm sorry. Was the Duke able to discipline him that way? And so Bastian turned a year old. His meeting with his greatest fear was closer than ever. Duke asks why Bastian skipped class. Is that what he taught him? The boy replies that he doesn't want to go there. His father struggled all the time, so was too nice. He couldn't punish him. Duke said he can't do what he wants to do. Why? After all, he is the son of the Grand Duke, the king's brother, the boy asked. Screamed, but he works all day anyway. Okay, he said. There's a banquet tonight at the royal palace. Escort your mother to it. Bastian yelled that he had nothing to wear. What do you mean? His father asked. I mean you have a whole closet bigger than anyone else. The young gentleman said he didn't like the shoes from the new collection, so he burned everything we ordered, said the boy's servant. The servant also continued. They ordered black shoes, but they were not of the shade the young gentleman wanted, so he immediately threw them into the burning fireplace. The boy's servant, as he told the story, immediately remembered the big fireplace in which all the boy's clothes were burning. Everyone will be looking at him. And those shoes weren't black enough, Bastian shouted. He didn't need shoes of that quality. Idly, the Duke couldn't stand it and shouted at him. Bastian Effenberg, if you don't like such trivialities, how are you going to survive in the Royal Academy? Not only did you miss class, but you also burned your clothes. Bastian sighed indignantly and said he was off to the banquet. A big banquet hall. Everyone's dressed nicely, and then there are voices. My goodness, it's the Duchess of Effenberg and her son. Everyone started to greet the boy. Hello, are you doing well? They asked. Bastian just smiled beautifully. And the girls would say, "Oh, an angel has descended from heaven. Duchess, your son is so handsome and polite," complimented the Duchess of Effenberg. Only the Duchess knew he was far from an angel, her son. It's probably like a joke, all they say. One lady turned and said, "By the way, this banquet and His Majesty had this banquet given by Luc Bichel in honor of the victory." And immediately there was talk about Luc. Everyone started talking about how incredible she was. Bastian was the only one who got very agitated. All he could hear around him was, "Luc, Luc." He thought that they were talking about Luc here too. Turning to his mom, Bastian asked to go out for some fresh air. He would be right back. Mom just sighed and said, "Sure, go ahead. At least he's on his best behavior in public." The boy went outside and plumped down on the green grass, lay down and lay down. He felt very good and pleasant. "It's so quiet here," he thought. The grass is very soft, the moon shining, the leaves rustling. But then he felt something. Something strange. Bastian had been raised in love and care, so he'd never heard the smell of blood. But instincts were higher. It was the smell of blood. "Nightmare," he thought. "We have to go back." He sat down on the grass and was just about to get up when he thought he saw something behind him. He froze. He was so scared to turn around, but curiosity got the best of him. Still, he decided to turn around and saw the girl with wings standing behind him. Then Bastian realized. He was so shocked he was at a loss for words. Only to himself he could think. He wondered what it was. Very frightened, he trembled. That's right. He thought it was Luc Bichel. She's covered in blood. Either she killed someone or it's her blood. Those wings. Anyway, so many questions. He had never been afraid of anything in his life. But this time he began to fear the man from the first time he met him. It was their first meeting. The boy fainted. Bastian woke up in his bed. When he opened his eyes, he heard his mother's voice. She asked him if he was awake and how he was. She was so worried. "This is one of the palace rooms. And you fainted. Don't you remember anything, mother?" "Sir Michel brought you to us," she said. And then Bastian's eyes widened very much. The excitement made the boy feel sick and he began to vomit. The mom screamed, "God, Bastian, hurry! Get a doctor!" "Is he all right?" the mother asked the doctor. The doctor I replied that perhaps when he fainted he hit his head hard, so he was not feeling well now. The doctor asked if he had any mental disorders. Maybe he had experienced some kind of shock. But Mom said, "Let me see. She can't remember anything like that. So she thinks there is no disorder. Although, wait a minute." She noticed a strange reaction at certain words in the boy. She thought, "Isn't she right?" Answered that the boy was still weak, but don't worry, he would take care of him. "His Majesty's banquet, you should be in the hall," he said. But Mom coquettishly pointed out, "Don't worry, I'll take care of my son. You worry too much," she said. Her son has a very difficult character, so he doesn't like outsiders. She asked the doctor to leave. When the mom was able to shove the doctor out the door, she walked over to her son and asked, "Now tell me the truth. Were you scared?" Jaws. He didn't know what to say back. He blushed, but yelled that of course not. No, he wasn't scared. Mom was upset that he didn't tell her the truth, but she put it down to the fact that he hadn't come to his senses yet. So she decided to try the truth. Whether she was or not, she started saying the name Luc. As the boy shouted from the one, "Stop it! Stop it!" she said, "There, did it shock you that much?" Even with his eyes closed, he sees this picture time after time. A bloody head in his hand. Fresh blood dripping. Blood never leaves his mind. And in those eyes, he saw death. His mom began stroking his head, reassuring the boy. "Well, there you go, you've met her," she said. His mom laughed and said she didn't understand what was scary about it. It's not like that at all. When Bastian felt better, he went for a walk, but his mother followed him and said, "Well, go say hello to Miss Bichel. She did bring you after all, so come on, don't be afraid." Well, the boys had a different opinion. He thought indignantly, "What kind of thank you greeting? She should be the one apologizing to him. How dare she show up in the royal garden looking like that?" She made him faint. As he approached the door, he realized that she was behind it, but he didn't feel like knocking. When he opened the door, he saw a little girl with black hair. He thought who it was and turned pale. The girl, leaning toward him, asked, "Is he all right? What is wrong with his face? Why is he so pale?" She handed him a handkerchief and told him he must be sweating after sleeping. "Here, take the handkerchief." Basya looked at the handkerchief, not understanding why he should accept it from someone like her. He took that handkerchief aside and said, "Get out of the way," hitting the girl that she fell down. The girl echoed him. "What do you mean from someone like me? What does he mean?" When Bastian turned around, he saw her violet eyes, just like back then in the garden. He abruptly changed his mind. He came over and said it was his fault and he apologized. A handkerchief. He said he would wash it and return it, and asked the girl what family she was from, what her name was. If anyone had seen this sight, would have found it amusing. A girl sitting on the floor with violet eyes said, "Her name is Luke Bishel." After she said her first and last name, he fainted again in broad daylight. The maid turned to Mr. Butler. "The young gentleman has refused breakfast," she said. "Butler Gould. Doesn't he do that all the time?" "What didn't he like this time?" Mr. Butler asked. He answered, "He hasn't eaten anything since he visited the royal palace. Thinks something has happened, but dares not ask." Mr. Butler thought, "Since then, interesting. Let's go." Coming to his room, knocking on the door, the gentleman said, "This is Hood. May I come in?" Upon entering the room, the butler bowed and said that he had been relayed to him that you were refusing food. "Is there something you don't like?" he asked. "I'm listening," Bastian replied. He asked, "Do you know Luke Michel?" "Dad said to act friendly with her, and it's only because she's a monster hunter," Bastian said. The butler said, "She is the Marquis of Luard." The boy asked, "So what of it?" The butler replied, "Not long ago, for her successful destruction of the rebellious desert tribes, the king granted her the title of Marquis of Luard." The boy asked, "Is she really that famous?" "Her reputation has been skyrocketing lately," Bastian said. "A close friend of the king, a war heroine." The boy began to list everything, and the butler confirmed it all, saying correctly. Bastian said he wanted to know more. The butler bowed and said, "Very well, him. Prepare a book for Bastian. Bring all the books on Luke Bishel." "None of them," Bastian said. A few years later. Still the same palace. Bastian's voice broke up. The door opened and Hertzak, Bastian's father, burst in. Not a boy anymore, but a guy. "Father, you're about to break down his door. Is something wrong? Why are we barging in like this?" Bastian Effenberg, 26 years old. "What, has he received a complaint from the Marquis of Verona? Has he done wrong?" he asks. Bastian stared at the book and said, "You already know, don't you? Why do you ask?" And he told me everything he knew. "It's that he's the reason Verona's been walking around in the street in her mother's clothes, running and crying and not knowing what to do," Bastian replied. "And whose fault is it that he didn't want to give him the money he borrowed from him? He was the first one to cross the line, the moment he asked him for gambling money. Bastian distinctly remembers him promising to pay him back 5 times as much. He agreed and promised not to tell his father about it, but there always comes a time to pay." "Father? Or did you think he liked undressed men? He just wanted his money back. Every time I think about it, my heart bleeds," Bastian said. Hertzak became discouraged. He began to shout, "Money to this madman!" Hertzak exhaled and said, "Okay, what's his schedule for today?" He asked his son. His mother wants to see him. Bastian wants to meet his mom too, but Bastian said he had other plans today. He's going to meet Her Majesty. The day to meet Her Majesty has arrived. In this kingdom, the Duke's receiver was obliged to visit the palace once a month. On this important day, Bastian was to hear joyful news. "Bastian, you've come!" shouted Queen Christina joyfully. Holding out his hand for Bastian to kiss, the boy said, "Your Majesty, Herr Effenberg, Bastian Effenberg, it's good to see you in good health." Christina replied that it was good to see him too. They sat down to tea. Christine said she liked his persistence, but he was quiet lately. Bastian asked, "You don't like it?" She replied, "A lion remains a lion, even if he hides his claws." Bastian asked, "Christina, and you look like you want to tell him something there." Bastian Effenberg replied, "A request has been made to marry you. The offer came from the Bruno family." "Bella Bruno, do you know her?" Christina asked. Bastian said, "Yes, I know. However, it's probably her parents who want this marriage, not her. All noble marriages are like that. She married because of her parents, too." They must be out of their minds," Bastian said. But the guy said what to do if he had already taken his vows. "Vows? Engagement? Are you engaged?" Christina asked. The guy said, "He didn't say it was an engagement." "Well, since it's not an engagement, what else?" Christina interjected. Bastian thought for a moment and said, "Well, for example—" "A promise," Bastian said. Christina said she could see he was up to something. By his amused reaction, I wonder if promising such an oath would be difficult to prove. What? Did the Count personally request this? He asked. He said he wanted her opinion, what she thought, and he thought to himself that his father knew about it. Said she didn't. Count Bruno is not a bad man, so maybe his father already knows about it. Bastian quickly got up and said he had to go. He had to leave her. Christina asked, Leaving already? Do you have some work to do, I suppose? Walking away, Bastian said, Yes, it's very important to get married. On the carriage, Bastian rode and thought. He saw the garden where he had first met her. The master asked, Where are we going? Bastian replied, To my father, we need to tell him about. Bastian is going to propose to Luc Bichel. The story took us back to where it all started. How before Bastian told his father that he was marrying Luc Bichel, Bastian had expected this reaction. Say, father, do you have anything to say? Guy turned to Gould the butler. Did you bring what he asked for? The look on Gould's face is number one. That bum is back to doing whatever he wants. Gould holds out some kind of book and hands it to Bastian. Bastian opens the book and begins to read out. He didn't eat anything because he had no appetite, but his father said that Luc eats as many as 5 times a day. The look on Gould's face is number 2. He doesn't know him as well as the Duke. It's Bichel again! He raged and smashed the dishes. That one! Father said he's only bringing the wedding closer at this rate. Dad shouted, Enough! But Bastian continued. X number, X month. The weather was so good that he missed fencing class. Father sighed and said that she had caught 5 demon horses last month. He also said that he should become a worthy heir to the duchy. Huh. The old man thinks he'll make him marry that girl if he keeps acting like this. Every time he says something, Dad threatens to marry her. We should switch, but I think we should ask her what she thinks about it, Luc. Luc, it's the same thing every day. Closing his notebook book, Father said he needed proof. Here they are. It's time to fulfill your promises, Father. Clutching his head, saying what has he done? Bastian stood up and said what predicted in advance the marriage of his favorite son. Said he was leaving, but the son asked, Where to? He's a good, responsible kid who listens to his parent. He's going to propose marriage. Luard is a territory located on the outskirts of the kingdom. Luc Bichel, along with the knights of the kingdom, destroyed a tribe of shamans in the northern desert. As a result, the queen granted her these lands. It had been 12 years since she had been ruler of Luard. Most of the shamans had disappeared from those places. How many of the monsters they had created had gone nowhere? Bichel continued to fight. She won victory after victory. It brought her incredible fame. Then the rumors started. Many people laughed at her for being a half-breed. They thought she wasn't worthy of everything she had gotten. The strongest mage in the kingdom, who won the title by her own strength. Mistress, you should rest. Just look at your circles under your eyes, Miranda butlered. A butler came into Luc's room and she brought her a snack. Your favorite milk pudding all on the table, very tasty cake, said the butler. Have some tea. The selected leaves for the drink fill you with vigor. Thank you, Luc replied. She would be sure to drink it all. Ah, her mistress, so lovely, Miranda thought. Deep violet eyes, snow-white skin. She is so beautiful and strong. Oh, mighty, majestic mistress. Loyalty grows stronger by the day, said the butler. There is no one in this world more amazing than you. You work from morning till night. You need to rest more often. Luc said. Then she needed to see the list of people she needed to meet. Huh, you're suggesting too much effort. I told you to get more rest, Miranda said. Luard needs you, but you shouldn't forget to take care of yourself. Thank you, Miranda, Luc said. There was a loud stomp as someone ran down the corridor. It was Ellie Klein's maid. She was hurrying to tell a very important piece of news. Fit in the office with her, Ellie said. What's wrong? Ellie shouted. We have a guest, Luc, she asked. A guest? Ellie immediately rushed over to her with a recommendation to dress up. Luc dragged her into the dressing room to change. Luc, she said, let's go straight to the living room. Elia tugged on Luc's arm. The girl asked, What do you mean, Elia? She couldn't take it anymore and shouted, He's come to propose to you. Luc asked, Constantine Siena again? Ellie said, Don't even mention those awful potatoes. Ellie told him he wasn't her type, Luc said, but the nickname is accurate. All right, well, if it's not Constantine, then who is it? Asked, and Alia answered, Bastian Effenberg. And that's when Luc's beautiful violet eyes opened. She started to stutter. Bas-K who? She asked again. Ali said, Haven't you ever heard of the Duke? Luc said, I've heard. And Luke cried out that she had never seen a guy so handsome. Handsome blonde, eyes like jewels. From every angle his features are perfect, even his voice is beautiful. Bastion as a work of art. Now do you understand? Or can't embarrass the lady in front of such a highly respected man? You can't go out with him looking like that, you need to dress up. Thought it was on her maid to propose, and it's Bastian Effenberg. Marquise, welcome. She had waited so long for this day, Taylor. It's been a long time, Philippa replied to Luke. She did not expect to visit her. She thought you would go straight to Sir Bastian. To change now would be disrespectful, Luke said. What do you mean? No, of course she'll make you shine even brighter now, Philippa said. But, since your guest is Sir Bastian, everything changes. Philippa clapped her hands and pronounced, Now prepare yourselves, we must emphasize all of Mistress's virtues. Each of Philippa's assistants got to work. Some were getting manicures, some were getting their hair done. Luke asked Philippa, Say, do you like Sir Bastian? And Philippa replied that this guy was a demon in the flesh. Lay down, Philippa said. It's been years since that time, Philippa. Please calm down. She used to run a good boutique in the center of the capital. One day the Duchess of Effenberg visited her. Impressed by her work, she invited the Phillips to her estate, but she could not have thought at the time how it all ends. All her stuff burned to the ground in the fireplace. It was a suit she'd spent weeks on, and it burned without even trying it on. Philippa, said Luke, if you hadn't given her a job then, she wouldn't have known what to do. Philippa, it's in the past, Luke said. Let's forget about it. It's thanks to him that you and I were able to meet. I am the beautiful Marquis. She will make sure you look perfect tonight. She promises you'll be the most beautiful in the kingdom. I'll show that bastard who's boss. Mistress, are you here? Miranda asked as she came in. Oh, Miranda, come in, Luke said. God, you're beautiful, you're adorable. Oh no, not again. You're not going to say yes to the proposal, are you? It's Bastian Effenberg, Miranda said. The most illustrious aristocrat in the kingdom has come to propose to her. That's pretty busy, Luke said. You don't have to agree. Miranda would have preferred Sienna instead. Luke replied, Well, didn't you resist the most when he proposed to her? Was, Miranda replied. It's just that he looks like a shriveled potato. Constantine Sienna of the 7 Marquises. Oh, and he's not such a bad knight either. You've met often and you know each other, Miranda said. Foa, Miranda, I don't think I'm the one who should be explaining this to you. But Luke replied that she didn't know. But he was ugly, and she didn't like him. And you can't keep your guest waiting. Let's hurry up and go. As she approached the door, she thought, behind that door, he's sitting there. The usual announcement. The Marchesa has arrived. She opens the door and enters. Bastian says, What, has he been waiting, Lady Luke? A moment's silence. Said welcome to Luard, Sir Bastian, and bowed. He knows what she wants to talk about. To be so courteous. Luke looked at him and realized he hadn't changed at all. Though no, it's more or less better now. Luke continued. Tells her they said Bastian arrived on some business. The guy asked, Have you been told yet? Which one? Luke laughed and said, I heard, and his to propose to her, but he came too suddenly. Luke said, What, she doesn't understand, decided to take that step. Bastian stood up and said, Reason. And then Luke remembered, alone, when they had first met. It was very rare, but now was the moment. She looked into his eyes and thought he really was too handsome, and it was even illegal. Asked again, what's illegal, when a man wants to propose? Or does he need a reason, Luke Bishel? He loomed over her directly and asked, What? He took her hand and kissed it, and at the same moment said that he loved her and asked her to marry him. With ease she replied, Okay, what, Bastian? Aged lifted his head and interjected, What? Luke repeated, She agrees to marry Bastian. The young men sat down each on their own couch, opposite each other, and looked into each other's eyes without averting their gaze. Delicate sapphire eyes under the cover of long lashes. He was taller than she'd expected. In a word, a walking masterpiece. Bastian asked if Luca liked him. The girl answered that she did. Luke coughed and said, Not a bad start. Satisfying your spouse's looks is the first step toward a happy marriage, Bastian said. He added that Luke looks great too. Both times we've met you, you've fainted, Luke said. Jumped up and said it. But Luke interrupted him saying, That's okay. That's how almost everyone who sees her for the first time reacts. But it was fine. Bastian said even though it was unpleasant, he was glad she accepted his offer. To be honest, he thought he was late, Luke asked. What do you mean? He said he had heard that the Marquis of Sienna's second son had preceded him. You know each other. So he was afraid you'd refuse to marry someone you don't know much about. That's why he was planning to give up. Luke asked, "What do you mean by that?" "I mean, we've met twice." Bastian interjected. "Yeah? Today is our first meeting with you, isn't it, lad?" Luke asked. "Why the first meeting?" He replied, "Because he's embarrassed." Luke thought, "You can't really tell by the face. Okay, already." She suggested they discuss the details and take a walk and look around the castle. "A very gentle breeze on your face," she said. "I hope you're comfortable too, Bastian." But he didn't hold back. Bastian grabbed Luke's hand and asked, "Can he kiss her?" But Luke said, "No." Tuck added, "So you're not always willing to agree?" He hopes they'll bond as soon as possible. Bastian is an aristocrat to the core. Nobility looks. He has everything one could dream of. There's not a flaw in him, Luke thought. So why did he decide to ask for her hand? What drove him to do such a thing? Luke asked herself. As they approached the castle, they heard the butler. "Are you done yet?" Luke asked. When she turned around, she saw, "Miranda, were you expecting us?" "Yes, mistress," the girl replied. "Then I'd like you to meet Sir Bastian, and this is Miranda. She helps her with the running of the business," Luke introduced. Miranda thought that after Constantine proposed, he left with swollen eyes, and this man looks normal. "Get the room ready because Bastian will be staying with us for a few days," Luke said. Luke also smiled and said that he would be the Marquise's consort very soon, and asked her not to offend him. And then Bastian decided to introduce himself. Said he was a little late with his greeting. "His name is Bastian Effenberg, your lady's future husband." With a smile and an attitude he said it. "Hello," he addressed Ellie, the maid of Castle Luard. She is in charge of the cleanliness and order around her mistress. Today she has a very important task, viz. The girl knocked on the room and said, "Hello, sir, her name is Ellie," leading him to his room, asking her anything. Bastian said he hoped she did. Ellie rejoiced, said, "Well, he's not what she imagined him to be. A new toy, a future spouse. Well, little things like that don't matter, do they?" Or walked and looked at him and couldn't believe he was the future owner of this house. Not only is he handsome, but he's tall. Also, this is Bastian Effenberg, the heir to the Eastern lands. He's the Queen's cousin. By marrying him, Madame will become the next Duchess of Effenberg. Their path will be golden. Anyone looking down on the mistress, look out, Ellie thought. She didn't think revenge would come so soon. She was already anticipating it. As they entered the room, Bastian questioned if this was the bed Luke was sleeping on. Bastian plopped right on the bed, or looked over and thought what she had just seen. Then he jumped up and ran to open the window, saying, "She was admiring the view. That and the teaspoon she was using." When Bastian took the small teaspoon in his hands, he couldn't be pleased. "Even though Luard is on the border, there's no way we'd let a guest use the same things as mistress," Ellie said. "There you go. How cheesy it all looks then. What a pity," Bastian said, and threw that teaspoon away. "They were told she made quite a bit of money." "What did they go for?" he asked. Elia held on with her last strength, barely calming herself down, smiling. She said that Madame is not a greedy person. She invests a lot of money in the development of Luard. Bastian said that sounded too nice. You can't only care about others. All Elle has to do is admit that she was very wrong in the first place. She can't let such a scoundrel near her sweet mistress. Elia replied that she could tolerate anything but mistress's insults. Bastian asked, "And what are you going to do?" Elia said she could make him disappear. Bastian could see that Allie had bright orange eyes and pointed ears. She was of another race, too. From her appearance, she then associated with Kurt's tribe of assassins. But that doesn't matter, he thought. "It's funny if you keep acting like that once I'm a husband," Michelle lied. "You know what the first thing she'll do?" Basta said. He continued, "We'll appoint her as his personal maid." Ellie was in great consternation. Yes, would she sit down if she served him? Better to fire her at once. "I fell into his lap and told him I was wrong and I apologize," she said. Bastian picked up the girl and said, "I suggest we should be better friends. What do you think?" Or did she think she was finished? Basin said, "Things are sorted. It's time to visit his beautiful bride." Or, she replied, "Most likely Luke is on the training ground when there's no important business to attend to. Mistress likes to be there. She has to personally observe the recruits." Bastian wondered. A training ground? He wondered. He figured he couldn't just drop in for a workout like that. It's rude. He asked a nearby knight, "If there's a spot that overlooks the field where Luke trains?" "Yes, sir," replied the knight. Said greeting. The name is Arthur Ginsel. Speaking of your question, the training room is clearly visible from the second floor of the watchtower. Shouting, Ellie, follow me! Bastian set off. I understood why he didn't go to the playground, but decided to go to the tower. What was the point of that? Oh well, gotta stay alert, she thought. Mistress, don't worry. Ella will keep an eye on him and won't let him hurt you. Greetings, Sir Ginsel. As they ascended the tower, the knight was greeted by others. Sir Ginsel asked the others, What is the situation on the border now? It's okay, the other knights replied. Pardon me, but with you, one of the knights asked a question. This is the first time they've seen him here. Sir Ginsel, who lowered his head down, said, If nothing changes, he will become the mistress's consort. Are you joking like that? The guards said, and a satisfied smirk painted on Bastien's face. He's completely satisfied. Moving closer to the edge of the tower, the knight said, There's our marquise. It seems she has decided to personally train the recruits, though she works hard. What wanton zeal, said Bastian. He noticed she looked at him. Wait a minute, what's the joke? The one behind her back? Those are wings, said Bastian. Damn. Now pull yourself together, Basin. You're not a kid anymore. There are so many people here. He's not allowed to slap his face in the dirt. The knight asked Bastian, Are you all right? Startled, he took a step back. What are you talking about? He himself is fine, Bastian said, and then he heard his name. Bastian, are you here? With one step, Luke leapt up and used her wings to climb the tower. Bastian thought, It's a good thing she didn't notice anything. Great. The important thing is to act natural. He said, Can you remove the wings? He thought they were tearing his clothes. Luke retracted her wings and said it had happened before. The girl asked, You've already seen it, haven't you? She had little control over her body then. Then, Bastian replied. He turned out to be more fearful than expected. Bastian grabbed his head. Luke said, Hang in there, Bastian. If you faint again, somehow you will. And Bastian covered her mouth with his hand in an instant and said, When has that ever happened? He moved even closer to her and said, I'll ask you again. When was that? He kept his hand over her mouth to stop her from speaking. Luke couldn't say anything. Bastian said, That's fine. Luke was approached by Ellie's maid. She was terribly angry. She wished her mistress would order her to kill him. If you do, she'll chop him up. But Luke said, Ellie, you can't. Why not? The girl asked. She promises she won't leave a single trace. Luke said, Calm down. He is my future spouse after all. But the knight muttered that unless something unforeseen happened. Bastian walked over and said, Arthur Gwenzel, why do you keep saying that? Arthur replied, Because nothing has been decided yet, has it? Bastian said, The important thing is that they both agree. Luard lands granted personally by Her Majesty the Queen. The Marquise may not have a huge influence, but she still holds a title of nobility and is a knight of the kingdom, said Arthur, the knight. Sir Bastian, let me ask you this. Has this marriage been approved by the Duke? Is that detail important? Asked Bastian. Ellie asked, What's that jackass, crazy gentleman carrying? Shouldn't you send a letter to the Effenberg family? Asked Arthur. Didn't know anything about it. It is necessary to make it clear that we are not involved. Luke asked. Why? Sir Arthur replied. Can't Bastian, not a future duke such as he, marry at his whim? Bastian shouted, Don't listen to him. It doesn't matter. Luke said, They tried to fool her. She almost became the protagonist of this craziness. Deception, shouted Bastian. Who do you take me for? He has something prepared in case they don't believe him. He apologizes for not doing it sooner. Luke asked, What exactly? Just then, Bastian pulled a ring box out of his pocket. Everyone immediately began to marvel. What a beautiful ring. Someone in the hearing shouted, Don't take it. But at some point it happened. Luke didn't realize how quickly it happened, but the ring was already on her finger. She'd even managed to take off her glove. Sir Arthur was sure it was a family treasure when he saw the ring. In an equally quick moment, Bastian put the same ring on his own finger and said, Now it's settled. From now on they are bound. Luke looked up at the sky and realized, saying they had a guest, but she hadn't received an invitation. From now on, treat him with respect when he arrives. Be that as it may, this is a very important visitor. She needs to meet him, Bastian said. Ellie, Sir Gwenzel, take care of Bastian's cheese, Luke said and went. Luke's face has changed so dramatically, Bastian thought. When he grabbed her, she was so fragile. He doesn't know her much, but he wants to know her, wants to talk to her, wants to spend a lot of time together, Bastian thought. Well, go ahead. Compared to your territory, ours may be as small as the palm of your hand. But even here, there's plenty to see. And trust me, you won't be disappointed, Ellie said. Bastian said with a dissatisfied face. How long has he been waiting for this? Well, let's see what's in this palm. Or replied, Ha, how infuriating. Even if she called her that, we can stop. What kind of building is this? It's falling apart at your touch, Bastian asked. It's where the castle staff lives. How can you live in a place like this? Began Bastian as he was interrupted by Ellie. She said, In the center is the dining room. To the left is the kitchen, across from the staff lounge. Interrupting. I can see you're just burning to be his personal maid, he said. Bastian immediately imagined Aaliyah falling on his lap and saying, O noblest Bastian Effenberg, what place do you wish to visit? And Bastian will be standing there thinking, Let's go to where Luke Bishel is. Sir Arthur said, That's impossible. And Arthur Gwynsel, you were here the whole time, Bastian said. Marquise has an appointment, she said, and she'll be here as soon as the meeting's over. And Arthur said it all kind of loudly. Bastian said, Arthur, his hearing is fine. He can hear and understand everything perfectly. There's no need to shout like that. Luke Bishel said he could go wherever he wanted, except for her personal territory. That's right. Bastian said he didn't know what was meant by personal territory. The living room counts as such. Sir Arthur said, Pardon me, he made a mistake. Let me escort you where you so desire, and bowed. Is Bella Bruno there? How did you know? My mom's got me guessing. Bastian went to the door and put his ear to the door to eavesdrop. Arthur said to him of reputation, Would you mind not eavesdropping? Bastian said, All right, I'll tell you since you're so curious. Sir Arthur asked, About what? Bastian continued to eavesdrop further, and heard Luke say that she didn't have it. He also heard that she was out of her mind. Don't even think about lying to her, she'll find out. The squeaky voice was definitely Bella Bruno, Bastian thought. Lucretia Bishel, don't be silent, Baste, he said. Oh, Sir Arthur asked what was wrong. Isn't Luke his real name? You're right again, Arthur said. Then why did she name her Lucretia? And this, said Sir Arthur. The lady is knighted by Duke Bruno's daughter. At her knighting she swore an oath of fealty to Mistress Bella. They have a special relationship. Well, no way, said Bastian, who opened the door and walked in on them. With the words, Ah, my lovely Lucretia, he missed you so much he couldn't wait any longer. Silence. Everyone sits at the table and is silent. He thought about him for a very long time, he asked. Why think about him? And Luke's thinking, why did she sit between the two of them? Bella Bruno, second daughter of Duke Bruno, one of the two leading families of the kingdom. That's why it's so obvious that her father and the Duke are on good terms. It's no surprise that they decided to bring their adoring children together. Damn Bastian, back when they ran into each other at school. She realized he was a real psycho. He's been pushing Luke around too, Bella thought. The first daughter of Bruno's family left to study in the Empire. The third daughter left to become a nun and told me not to look for her, Bastian thought. Why is this sitting still rather than really wanting to marry him? Bastian offered to vaporize Bella. If she disappears, he'll forgive her for the memory of their feudal friendship. What's he really crazy? He wants to marry Lucretia? Really? Well, yeah, Bastian replied. Ha, what nonsense you're talking, Bella said. This is her favorite Lucretia. Bastian interrupted and said that he came because he was unable to stand. Lucretia asked, What exactly? Was he eager to see her? Bella jumped up and said, Lucretia, but look at him. He's a real psychopath. Bastian said, Look, if he had been, do you think he would have jumped into this luard? He only did it because he was crazy about Lucretia. When he kissed her hand, he noticed that the ring was still on her finger. Bella poked her finger at Bastian and said, There she is, that dirty grin. Bastian replied, What's looking at my face? Luke couldn't take it anymore and said, Stop it, you already have. Cheesebuster, this is my lady Bella Bruno. She is a very dear person to me. Be polite. Speaking of which, about that even if you have low standards, Bastian asked. Bella jumped up and started yelling, Effenberg, watch your words! Lying down, she yelled again, Yeah, enough already! Both important guests need to get along. Get along with that? No way. Well, be honest, Bella said. You agreed for the sake of us not getting married? It was because she said she'd jump into the sea if she married him. What are you talking about? Bastian asked. Bella answered him, "Marriages between aristocrats are always between families." So she told Lucretia that she would rather die than marry Bastian. Bastian asked, "I? The cauldron doesn't boil at all. Lucretia just decided to marry you. She has an idiot in her place," Bella said. "So why did she say yes so easily? Luc Bichel is known throughout the kingdom. She deserves to be recognized and has achieved great things. But Bastian has no time to be discouraged. He has the upper hand. A title, mountains of money, and most importantly, perfect looks. What could be better? Well, actually, not as much as he thought. Buster was always honest with himself. What if she really did decide to marry him? Isabella Bruno. What to think of now but that? And one should get married anyway. He's also very insolent." Luke said, "It's not like that at all." Bella asked, "But she wasn't interested in marriage, was she? She even turned down an offer from Constantine Siena, with whom they are so close." Luke shouted, "Friendship is no reason to get married." "In front of her eyes is just a perfect example of that," Luke said, pointing to Bastian and Bella. "If friendship was a good reason, then wouldn't Bella be the best candidate? She is her closest friend, after all." Bella said, "How did I not think of that right away? Really, why doesn't Luke marry her?" Bella jumped up and said, "Lucretia, I will take care of you. She excels at everything, doesn't she?" "Wait! What's all this nonsense?" shouted Bastian. "In what way are you better than him? Lineage? Looks? Wealth? What exactly are you superior to him in?" "I don't know about that," replied Bella. "But as a person, she's clearly better than him. You can't argue with that, it's ironclad logic. Even though it is, okay, it was, thanks for the offer. But she's going to refuse," Bella shouted. "Why is that?" "Luke has an old dream, to marry a handsome man. You're failing on the first count." "There it was again," he shouts. "But she's not that ugly." And Luke added, "And two, she wants to give birth to one son and two daughters. That's her second dream." Bella asked, "What about adoption?" Luke said, "No." Bastian asked Luke, "Do you like children?" Bastian, overjoyed, shouted, "Don't worry, even if it's 3, even if it's 4. He has complete confidence in himself." Even though he was now saying that he was confident not only in his looks, but also in his strength. "No, you can't do that. You can pick whoever you want. Constantine is better," Bella shouts. Bella Bruno, how dare she compare him to some Constantine, and yet offer him to her beloved Lucretia? Luke yanked Bastian by his jacket and asked, "How about this?" "What do you mean?" asked Bastian. "Well, about those words you add to her name?" "Ah," he said, "you mean my beloved Lucretia?" It's just that when she hears those words, she gets a little embarrassed. Bastian inside himself was directly screaming. He couldn't believe how it was the same Luc Bichel who was embarrassed. The best mage in the entire kingdom, knighted by the queen, the Marquis of Luard. She can be called many things, but there is no word that can describe how sweet she is. "Do you really love?" mumbled Bella. Luke wanted to ask that too. "About what?" asked Bastian. "You said you loved her?" "Love," he exclaimed, "even more than you think." He fell in love with her at first sight. "Yeah, you'll be telling others that. At first sight you almost fell off your skates," Luke said. "Okay, right, because I liked you too much. I lost my temper." Bella's freaking out again, saying she knew it. Can't let that happen since it is. She'd better marry him herself. "Don't worry, Lucretia. She'll figure out a way to work it out." "Don't worry, she'll take care of it real quick." She slammed the door and ran out. Luke said she'd forgotten what it was like to do and then think. "Cheese basin, we need to go to the capital immediately through the portal," Luke said. "Asked what you mean?" "If she wants something, she'll go all the way until she gets it," Luke said. "Given her course of action, a new marriage proposal will soon come to the Effenberg family. And before that happens, they have to get ahead of her. You can't do that, can you?" "She understands, Lord Baston. There is absolutely no need for you to accompany her." "Nah, Basin," he said firmly, coming on. "True," said Luke. "He doesn't know what kind of delusion she has about him, but he's quite able to go." Luke said she didn't think it was a delusion. Approaching the portal, Bastian asked, "How does it work?" Luke said magic is needed. "She's asking to turn away for 1 minute," magic interjected Bastian, and Luke's wings appeared. "Really?" he said. "Damn it!" His body tensed on its own. Why is this happening without his will, he thought. Why can't he just open his eyes? "Please follow her, Lord Buster. It won't be long, so try not to open your eyes." Everything shone brightly. So much time had passed, but nothing had changed. Luke picked Bastian up in her arms and flew through the portal on wings. "Your lordship, you have visitors," reported the Duke. He asked the visitor, "Who are they?" And the butler replied, "This is Luke Bishel and the young gentleman." Duke, thought Bastian, what an idiot. "It seems the time has come. Let them come in," said Luke. Everyone gathered in the dining room for a cup of tea. "I'm afraid my son has caused you trouble," the Duke said. Luke said she wasn't sure she understood what Duke was talking about. "He means he knows his son and can imagine how annoying and tiresome his antics were," Luke said. "I don't think Lord Bastian was annoying and tiresome. On the contrary, he came to propose to her," Bastian added. "The Duke apologizes profusely for taking up your time when you're already busy, lady." And then the Duke could see across the table that Luke had a ring on his finger. He said, "Wait, what's that on your finger, Luke?" the Duke asks. She didn't realize what he meant. It's the ring on your finger. It's a family heirloom," the Duke said. Luke replied that she knew. She was flattered. After all, it was so beautiful and elegant. The Duke said, "Let me get one thing straight. Did you accept his offer?" Luke replied, "Yes." The Duke said, "Then you must break the engagement," Luke replied, "and I won't think of it." "But they've already made an arrangement with the daughter from Samin," shouted the Duke. "But her arrangement was made even earlier. Her Majesty promised her long ago that she could choose any man she liked as her groom. Your ladyship, perhaps Her Majesty's uncle or the ruler of the kingdom." Luke said angrily that she doubted he could disobey her orders. She pounded her fist so hard that the butler next to her sat down, and Bastian was very excited. "Perfect, she's adorable, amazing, and incredible. Go Luke Bishel." His father, Duke Bastian, is the grand ruler of the eastern region of the kingdom. He greatly values anyone's honor, so you don't have to worry about that. The Duke couldn't believe his own son was doing this to him. "Marquise, please refuse. If you wish, he can offer you a much better marriage," the Duke said. "For example, what about Constantine of Siena?" "Based," he said to his father. "How could you compare that beast Constantine to him?" He was disappointed in his sense of the beautiful. The Duke said, "Did you call Constantine a beast?" "Your lordship, are you against this marriage because Sir Bastian has poor ruling qualities?" asked Luke. "Or is there another reason?" The Duke said, "There is another reason." "You object because it has mixed blood in it?" asked Luke. The Duke shouted, "That's not true at all. In fact, the Bruno family is descended from the Carpin family. Then why doesn't anyone understand?" The Duke took hold of his head and said he was ashamed to say it, but it pained him to realize he was living with his son and his terrible temper. He could have left the kingdom. His son would have been a poor man abandoned by his wife. "He didn't raise his boy right," Herzog says tearfully. "Eventually you'll get tired of his smarmy face, and you already know his sharp tongue, don't you? Since he's his son, he'll forever be a nice boy in his father's eyes. But he doesn't expect others to feel the same way." Luke said she also finds him cute, but it is not that simple. "If you tire of it and decide to leave the kingdom, it will be a severe blow to our pride," the Duke said. Luke said, "Your ladyship, she promises him. Don't worry." The Duke said he never thought to hear such words. "When is the wedding to take place?" he asked. Buster said he personally wanted the wedding to happen as soon as possible. But the Duke said, "You hold your horses. Your opinion doesn't change the meaning." When Bastian was all glowing with his father's approval, when he considered Bastian's opinion at all, something changed in Luke's mind, but of course Bastian didn't notice it. Luke Bishel thought for a moment. That's Bastian Effenberg, a man who doesn't stand out for anything, other than the fact that he is the Duke's heir. Even more so, he became known throughout the empire solely for his beautiful face and sharp tongue. He became Lord Bastian. In this chaotic world of aristocrats, where one or two illegitimate children hardly attract attention, he'd have no trouble shutting him up. Luke thought that about trust was a whole other issue. Love, ridiculous. It was originally ridiculous, the Duke's heir proposing to her. After all, she has no reasonable grounds to refuse. On the other hand, compared to the battles, she finds it all a bit amusing. The Duke said, "Oh, right. Since you're here, why don't you meet his wife?" Luke asked. "With the Duchess?" "Yes, she will arrive shortly. Until then, Bastiat can familiarize you with the Eiffelberg Palace." She was a little nervous because it was the first time she was in Bastian's palace. "Believe me, he's got everything. Whatever she's expecting. What you are about to see will be beyond your imagination." The door opened, and many maids bowed and said, "Welcome, your lordship. How many suits do you wish to change into today?" It turned out to be Bastian's dressing room. Then they went into the kitchen. When Bastian opened the door, the same thing happened. Several cooks said, "Oh dear, Welcome, your lordship. Have you decided what you're going to eat? We have everything you prefer. Natural raspberries watered exclusively with morning dew from the top of the lamppost. Cheese made from the milk of goats fed 3 times a day on freshly picked leaves, and green tea. He opens another door, and there he is again. Oh, your lordship, your horse is nursing as luxuriously as ever. It was his personal stable. Luke thought that the clerks here definitely operate on a special level of sophistication. Bastian had said that the same should be true of Luard. He would do anything to achieve that. She thought he wanted to make Luard into this, but the Lord is absolutely nothing like this place. Luke began to ponder. She has a butler who only listens to her, Ellie, who will do anything not to bow down to Bastian, and Philippa. We'd have to make sure she and Bastian don't run into each other. That's right, another respectable Earl's vicar. Would Basia be able to take control of all of them? Bastian asked why she was looking at him like she didn't trust him. Luke replied that she was just looking forward to seeing him in action. Okay, in a good mood now, so I'll pretend I didn't hear anything. Is that what it's like to get what you wanted? I'm sorry, Luke said. It was the first time he had accomplished something on his own. Luke turned to Basta. Adna said he has everything, and she's really amazed by that. But he has something that regular people can't get, even if they work all their lives. She was born with nothing. She had to work hard to get where she is now. So, she doesn't want to lose this opportunity. He said he loves her, but she is not the kind of person who believes in love at first sight. Vasya asked, "What does she mean by that?" You see, when she imagined he might belong to someone else, she didn't like it. Wait a minute. What she means is that she's not really welcome, but at the same time she doesn't want him to belong to anyone else. What she means is that from now on, she's going to keep him to herself and just look out for him. She's giving herself to him, even if it's only possible through marriage, Vasya asked. And then? She didn't think it through enough. And what does she mean by look after him? How is that possible? Asked the lad. He is the most handsome man in this kingdom. His looks are all he has after all. So he puts a lot of effort into maintaining it. She doesn't like his face? Maybe his body isn't attractive enough or his voice is too disgusting, asked Bastian. No, what did you say, Luke? Then I ask you to change your mind, and his defense and as soon as possible, said Luke Bichel, for he's definitely not going to just look out for her. Leaning over, he told her in her ear, and he also absolutely disagreed with spending their honeymoon in the Lord in that shabby old palace. So she'd better agree, Bastian said. Luke thought it was creepy, Bastian's words. I mean, we're talking about their first holy night together. Shouldn't it be at the best time and place? Don't worry about it, Luke. All she needs is to be there for him. Luke, for a minute, even forgot what kind of guy he really is. She already frankly felt like spreading her wings to gag him. And then their conversation was interrupted by a woman's voice saying, "My God, so that's where you are?" Everyone turned around and saw. I apologize for keeping you waiting. If she had known you were visiting, she would have given you a proper welcome. It was the Duchess of Effenberg. It's been a long time, Marquise. Although, come to think of it, we haven't seen each other since that day. How have you been? Luke bowed and replied, Indeed, it has been a long time. Duchess, I hope you have been well all this time. Goodness, young lady. Are you well trained in manners? She heard you accepted Bastian's offer, Luke replied. Yes, I have. And then no one expected it at all. The Duchess jumped on Luke, started shaking her and asking, But why? Why did she do it? The Duchess began to question her. Does she really want this? Could it be that someone is blackmailing her? At this moment, Bastian stood there with a twisted face. Luke said she just couldn't say no when she saw him. The Duchess said, Oh, not that. After all, you're so young. Bastian couldn't understand why her mother was so worried about her. In any case, she imagines what a difficult journey it was to get from the Lord to here. You must be tired. Please stay for a couple of days, the Duchess suggested. Luke replied that they had arrived by means of a portal. Also, she could not be absent from her lands for too long. Therefore, they planned to return soon. Oh well, said the Duchess, we can't detain the man. In that case, Duchess, why don't you two get married while you're here? When she first looked at the Duchess, she had déjà vu. She kept wondering what it could be, and now it made sense to her. Bastian Effenberg looks just like his mother. She accepts their proposal, but as she knows, Lord Bastian has no official title. She is, after all, a marquess, and the territories under her control, though that is nothing compared to your family's holdings. In view of this, She thinks it would be more appropriate to hold the wedding in Luarda. Mother looked at Based. She asked. She thought they had already discussed all the details. You'd start by letting them talk quietly. They've only spent half a day together, Bastian said. The Duchess said she thought they had already heard about her visit to Bruno's palace today. Clarice was absolutely distraught. I suppose they'll be doing something about it soon. I agree with you, Lady Michelle, said the Duchess. You are the Marquis of our kingdom, and Bastian still has no title. But still, realize the position they are in. What is it that you are? Asked Luke. The Duchess said she realized her son was mediocre, but he's the Queen's only cousin. If healing is factored in, as powerful as their family is, they're going to have a huge number of guests. And accommodating them in the Lord is quite a problem, Luke thought. Besides, it's better to have the wedding as soon as possible. If it's a burden to you, you should at least do the paperwork, the Duchess said. And that's possible, Luke said. It seemed to her that the process would take at least a few months. The Duchess, in a desperate position. Our refusal could shake her position very badly. But if we declare that everything was predetermined and apologize, it will save her face. Luke said it was a good decision, but Bastian said he agrees with Mother. He told her from the beginning that he wanted to get married as soon as possible. He will do his best. Luke looked at Bastian and thought, all he has is his good looks. His beauty is definitely worth her effort. He'll do anything to make sure Luke has the best wedding ceremony ever. After all, she's going to say yes to him. Something happened in Luke's head. What was that sound? Have you all forgotten or what? It's unreal beautiful, the one you heard. It was Luke Bishel losing her mind. Luke replied, but of course we'll return to Luard right after the ceremony. The Duchess exclaimed, Excellent! Now it is settled. For their convenience we need someone from Luard to come here. Even though they're doing everything in a hurry, the wedding is an important event. Let us take care of the rest, the Duchess said. Luke replied, Thank you, your lordship. Oh, my name is Hildegard. Just call me Hilda, replied the Duchess. Buster asked his mother not to call many guests. After all, they would have a second ceremony in Luard. Bastian told Luke, This is going to be our real wedding. But she definitely won't regret the first ceremony. He asks just to give it 3 days. Miranda, the butler at Luard, says, Filipov is currently crying at the explosion. And it's no wonder, because her dream of sewing a wedding dress for you is completely shattered, said Ella, who now looks like a lizard. How could you make a decision like that? And even alone? She didn't like him from the start, the lizard said to Ella. Elia, thank you for opening the portal, Luke said. Well, it can't be helped. It takes magic to open a portal after all, Elle said. It's all good, and she would like to wish you well. The doors swung open and in walked Bastian with the words, So there you are, where is everyone? He saw a green lizard, his gaze immediately noticing it. He asked what it was and held out his hand. He's so cute. Taking it in his arms, he began to squeeze this lizard with joy. Luke, is he yours? Asked Bastian. Can he walk with him? The lizard waved her arms as best she could with the words, My lady, please save me. Luke said, Sure, take a walk. Fine, let's go, Boo-Boo baby, Bastian said. That's not fair. And she doesn't like the name Boo-Boo, waving her hands, trying to tell Ellie the lizard. Vasin, who had gathered everyone aloud, sat down in a chair on the balcony and began to speak. He demands that you work off the wages he will pay them. All the servants bowed and said, We are at your disposal, sir. The wedding will take place tomorrow at noon at his villa, Bastian said. We need to cancel all other activities. He's already booked all the boutiques in the capital in his name, so you're free to spend as much as you need to. Don't skimp on anything. Buy only the best. Even if an item is booked by someone else, if it fits, then buy it too. But remember, if counting checks diverge, even if only for singing, you will feel the wrath of Bastian Effenberg. All the servants as one said, Yes, we're already aware of it. We'll fulfill everything. Raising his hand, one of the servants asked, Your lordship, whom are you marrying? Good question, he said. That's where he's getting married. My perfect match is Luke Bishel. And the same servant shouts, But you don't mean the same Luke Bichel, do you? And why not? Bastian said. Is there anyone else worthy of her? What makes him so sure? He really thinks he's worthy of her, the servants began to whisper. Maybe Luke Bishel owes someone a debt. I mean, why else would she marry him? It doesn't make any sense. Maybe it's some new way of sacrifice? She's slain demons, defended the borders. and now she needs to battle the sharp tongue of the Empire. In that case, apparently God doesn't exist. Bastion banged his fist, and everyone shuddered at once. All of them, as one, said, "You can rely on us, Your Highness. They will do everything to make the wedding perfect." Naturally, it's all about Luke Bishel. The next day, Bastion is going through the invitations for the guests. The butler says, "Well, sir, we can't just turn down all these guests." Bastion already knows who he will invite. "Gould, send personal invitations to everyone on this list." "This is the guest list," Gould began to read out. "Unthinkable," he said. "Eugene Sorel, Duchess Bruno, and Constantine Siena. Are you only inviting those 3 people?" "Are you sure?" interjected Gould. "Honestly, there's a couple people there who he wouldn't invite, but that would cause more trouble." He chose his guests carefully. Gould noticed a lizard on Bastion's shoulder. "Apparently he likes animals," he thought. "Looks just like him. He supposes you have invited Eugene Sorel, as he may be present at the royal palace. But the others? Have you had time to meet Constantine Siena?" asked Gould. "No, but I'd like to from now on," Bastion said, asking not to be invited. "Well, why should he?" said Bastion. "Say it plainly. Constantine Siena is the only one he wishes to invite. So accept him with special honor, and also make sure he sits in the front rows." "Well, naturally. Sit him down so he can't see Luke Bishel's face. Find the perfect spot so he can't see anything." "What are you talking about?" said the Lord. "Why would you hide your wife's face from a guest?" "Why should he need to see her? He is his guest. It is enough for him to see only him. Constantine Siena is the one who dared to send a proposal to the Marquise of Luarda. All he has to do now is to look at his beautiful face. Or all this time, eavesdropping, sitting on Bastion's shoulder. She's been eavesdropping the whole time. Huh, he's turning out to be sneaky. Poor potato head, she thought. That's the first time he's either sympathized with Constantine. Vanilla pudding. Luke felt like vanilla pudding. Luke is getting a massage, and the masseuse interjects. "Can I make you some dessert, lady? Are you hungry?" Luke replied, "No, I've had enough sweets for today." Luke thought, starting early in the morning. First she'd had a milk bath, followed by 2 honey compresses all over her body. And at the moment, she was being massaged with vanilla oil. She asked, "Is this the masseuse's last treatment?" Because I didn't have the energy to sit through all that vanilla. The masseuse said, "The last one, of course not. After that, once we're done with the upper body, try on the dress. Then back again for a Thai massage, a gummy muscle lifting massage, and 3 cleansing treatments." "Got it," Luke said. This spa, recommended by Bastion, is something of a treat. When they weren't done, Luke stood up and said, "You are a master of your craft. I feel so light in the shoulders." Luke asked, "Does Bastion often get massages?" "You probably don't know. But every time Bastion visits our salon afterward, all the staff members get drunk all night." "Is it that bad?" asked Luke. She knows she's not allowed to ask such a thing, but still. "Why did you choose him?" Luke said, "Because he's very handsome, isn't he?" The maids thought that Luke Bishel had spent so much time fighting that she didn't know anyone better. They said there are only handsome men in the world. Luke asked, "Maybe you can recommend someone? The owner of such a luxurious spa is sure to know more hotties than she does." Finally, a chance to update her hot collection. One of Luke Bishel's prized possessions. A collection of the kingdom's hot guys.